Imagine being so hungry that eating an entire meal never makes you feel full. Now imagine swallowing baskets of apples whole, live cats, snakes, stones, corks, and anything else you could get your hands on. Only to be hungry again minutes later. People watched him consume meals meant for 15 grown men. Doctors examined him. Scientists were baffled. Military officers tried to turn his strange condition into a weapon. And in the end, the same hunger that made him famous would also destroy him. This is the unbelievable true story of Tarrare. A man who could never stop eating. Nobody knows exactly when Tarrare was born. Historians believe it was sometime around 1772 in rural France, just a few years before one of the bloodiest revolutions in history. At first, there was nothing extraordinary about him. He was just another village boy. But as he grew older, something impossible began to happen. His appetite became monstrous. While most children were satisfied after a simple meal, Tarrare would continue eating and eating and eating. His parents watched in disbelief as their son consumed enough food to feed an entire family. Some reports claimed he could eat a quarter of a cow in a single day. At first, his family assumed he was simply growing. Then they wondered if he was ill. Eventually, feeding him became impossible. Food was expensive. France was already struggling with poverty. Keeping Tarrare alive meant everyone else went hungry. Finally, his parents made a heartbreaking decision. They threw him out if he wanted to survive. He would have to feed himself. For most people, this would have been the beginning of tragedy. For Tarrare, it was the beginning of legend. He wandered from town to town begging for scraps. Anything edible disappeared into his mouth: vegetables, bread, rotting meat, animal organs. People said he'd eat food that had already gone bad and ask for more, but even that wasn't enough. Eventually, he joined a group of traveling performers, not because he could sing, not because he could dance, but because people paid money to watch him eat. Imagine standing in a crowded French marketplace in the late 1700s. Street performers juggle knives, musicians play their violins, children laugh. Then someone shouts, "Come see the man who can eat anything." Crowds gathered instantly. Tarrare would step forward with a smile. Someone handed him a basket filled with apples. One by one, they disappeared. Then another basket, then another, then another. He reportedly swallowed dozens of apples without slowing down. The audience cheered. Someone brought live eels. He swallowed them whole. Someone offered snakes. He swallowed those too, not cut into pieces, not cooked. Alive, people watched in horror as the animals slid down his throat. Then came stones, pieces of cork, entire baskets of food. His stomach seemed bottomless, no matter how much he consumed. He never appeared satisfied. The crowd loved it, but once the performance ended, the real nightmare began. Because Tarrare was still starving, the hunger controlled every moment of his life. If he walked past a butcher's shop, he stared at the raw meat. If he passed garbage, he searched through it. When stray dogs or cats disappeared, people whispered his name. Some stories claimed he ate live puppies. Others claimed he swallowed entire cats after tearing them apart with his teeth. Modern historians debate exactly which stories are true and which became exaggerated over time. But one thing is beyond dispute. Everyone who met Tarrare agreed on one horrifying fact. His hunger never stopped, not for a single moment. As strange as his appetite was, his appearance was even stranger when he hadn't eaten. He looked surprisingly ordinary, thin, short, almost frail. Doctors estimated he weighed barely 100 pounds, despite eating enough food for 15 men. His skin hung loosely from his body like oversized clothing. His cheeks drooped. His stomach appeared flat. But then, he ate. Within minutes his abdomen expanded enormously. Witnesses said it looked like a giant balloon being inflated. The loose skin stretched until it became tight. After digesting everything, it simply sagged back down again. Doctors could actually pull the skin away from his body. His mouth was unusually wide. His teeth were badly stained. His lips barely covered them. His body temperature stayed abnormally hot. He sweated constantly. And then there was the smell. Everyone who met Tarrare mentioned it. They said he smelled so terrible that people struggled to stand near him. The odor surrounded him like a cloud. Doctors described it as unbearable. One physician claimed you could smell Tarrare from 20 paces away. After eating, the odor became even worse. He would sweat heavily. His eyes became bloodshot. Steam reportedly rose from his body during cold weather. The room filled with foul air. It was as though his body was working overtime, trying desperately to process impossible amounts of food, yet it never succeeded, because no matter how much entered his stomach, his hunger always returned. Then came the French Revolution. Europe descended into war. France desperately needed soldiers. Like thousands of young men, Tarrare joined the French army. He hoped military rations would finally satisfy him. Instead, they barely kept him alive. Each soldier received the same daily food allowance. For Tarrare, it was gone within minutes. He begged fellow soldiers for leftovers. They shared what little they had. Still hungry, he searched refuse piles. Still hungry, he scavenged for anything remotely edible. Still hungry, eventually he became so weak from starvation, despite eating constantly, that he collapsed. Army doctors couldn't understand it. How could a man who consumed so much look like he was dying from hunger? They admitted him to a military hospital. That decision would change Tarrare's life forever, because for the first time, he wasn't being treated as a circus attraction. He became a medical mystery, and the doctors were determined to discover just how much one human being could actually eat. When Tarrare arrived at the military hospital, the doctors didn't know what to expect. They had heard the stories. A man who could eat enough food for an entire family. A man who was always starving. A man whose appetite seemed to ignore every law of nature. Like scientists presented with an impossible experiment, they decided to test him, not with ordinary meals, but with impossible ones. One day, they prepared enough food to feed 15 laborers: bread, meat, vegetables, pies, wine. The amount covered an entire table. Several doctors gathered to watch. Soldiers stood nearby, curious to see whether the stories were true. Tarrare sat down, without rushing, without struggling. He began to eat. Plate after plate disappeared, loaf after loaf vanished. The meat followed, then the vegetables, then everything else. He didn't vomit, he didn't complain, he simply continued until there was nothing left. The doctors stared at the empty table, then they turned to Tarrare. He smiled, and quietly asked if there was anything more to eat. The physicians became obsessed. One doctor, Baron Percy, recorded many of these observations himself. They tried different experiments. One day they handed Tarrare a live cat. Surely thought this would stop him. Instead, he grabbed the animal. Witnesses claimed he bit into it, consumed it, and later discarded only the bones and fur. Other reports described him swallowing live snakes, live lizards, even eels. The eels, according to one account, slid down his throat alive. Whether every story happened exactly as told is impossible to know today. But these accounts all came from physicians who genuinely believed they were witnessing something unlike anything medicine had ever seen. And the hospital itself became another source of food. Whenever Tarrare wandered the halls, the staff grew nervous. He raided kitchens. He stole meals prepared for sick patients. He searched garbage bins. He devoured scraps meant for animals. Nothing escaped his attention. Then came the idea that would forever tie Tarrare to military history. France was still at war. Messages carried by spies were constantly intercepted. Military officers wondered, what if a message could be hidden somewhere no enemy would think to look? Someone looked at Tarrare and had an idea. The doctors placed a small wooden box containing a written message inside his mouth. He swallowed it whole. Then they waited, hours later, after nature took its course. The box emerged exactly as expected. The message inside remained perfectly readable. The generals believed they had discovered the perfect courier. No enemy soldier would suspect that an important military message was hidden inside the stomach of an ordinary man. So Tarrare was given a mission. He would cross enemy lines carrying secret information. If captured, the message would remain hidden. At least, that was the plan. Reality proved very different. Tarrare wasn't a trained spy. He barely spoke German. His appearance alone attracted attention. Thin, sweating constantly, giving off an unbearable smell. He stood out wherever he went, almost immediately after entering enemy territory. He was arrested by Prussian soldiers. At first, they searched his clothes, nothing. Then they questioned him. His answers made little sense. The officers grew suspicious. Eventually, under pressure, Tarrare confessed that he had swallowed something. The soldiers chained him to a toilet and waited. Hours later, the tiny wooden box appeared. The officers opened it. expecting valuable military intelligence instead. They found almost nothing of importance. The French commanders had deliberately sent him with a meaningless message. They wanted to see whether the strange delivery method actually worked before risking important secrets for Tarrare. It was a disaster. The furious Prussian commander reportedly ordered him to be hanged. At the last moment, the sentence was withdrawn. Instead, Tarrare was beaten severely and released. He limped back to France humiliated. His career as a military spy was over before it had truly begun. After returning to the hospital, things became darker. Rumors spread among nurses. Food continued disappearing. Livestock vanished. One day, a 14-month-old child disappeared from the hospital. No one could prove what had happened. There was never enough evidence to accuse Tarrare of any crime, but suspicion immediately fell upon him, given everything doctors had already witnessed. Many believed the worst. Whether the accusation was true has never been proven. Historians still debate it today, but the damage was done. The hospital expelled him. No physician wanted him there any longer for the first time in years. Even the doctors had given up trying to understand him. Tarrare disappeared for several years. No one knew where he had gone then. Around 4 years later, he returned, not as a performer, not as a curiosity, but as a dying man. He found Baron Percy, the physician who had studied him. Tarrare believed he knew what was killing him. Years earlier, he claimed, he had swallowed a golden fork. He was convinced it remained trapped inside him. He begged Percy to remove it and save his life. The doctor examined him carefully, but he doubted the fork was the problem. Tarrare was desperately ill. He suffered from severe tuberculosis. His body was failing. He could barely move. The endless hunger, the endless eating, had finally caught up with him. Shortly afterward, Tarrare died. He was only about 26 years old. Even in death, the mystery continued. Doctors performed an autopsy. What they found shocked everyone. His esophagus was enormously wide, so wide they reported that they could look directly into it. His stomach filled almost his entire abdominal cavity. When empty, it hung in massive folds. His internal organs appeared abnormal. His liver was unusually large. His gallbladder was enormous. Signs of disease covered much of his body. But none of it explained the impossible hunger. No tumor, no obvious defect, no clear answer. Medicine had reached the end of its understanding. Baron Percy later admitted that Tarrare's body was so badly decomposed and foul-smelling that many doctors refused to continue examining it. The mystery died with him more than 2 centuries later. Scientists still don't know exactly what caused Tarrare's condition. Some researchers believe he may have suffered from damage to the hypothalamus, the part of the brain that controls hunger. Others have suggested rare hormonal disorders, hyperthyroidism, or unknown genetic diseases, but none of these explanations fully fit the evidence. Even today, his appetite remains one of the strangest medical cases ever recorded. Some details from the surviving accounts may have been exaggerated over time. Stories told and retold often grow larger than life. Yet the core facts remain undeniable. Multiple respected physicians documented Tarrare's extraordinary hunger while he was alive. They watched him eat amounts of food that should have been impossible. And despite all the advances of modern medicine, no one has ever fully explained how one man could consume so much and remain forever starving. Tarrare spent his entire life searching for something most people never have to think about, the feeling of being full. It never came. No feast was large enough. No meal was satisfying enough. His body demanded more, every single day, until the day it finally gave up. Some stories are frightening because of monsters. Others are frightening because they remind us how little we truly understand about the human body. And perhaps that's why, more than 200 years later, the name Tarrare is still remembered, not because he was a king, not because he won wars, but because he suffered from a hunger that no one on earth could ever satisfy.